let the night wrap around you. The night opens like a quiet book, waiting for gentle stories to unfold. History breathes slowly in the distance, like an old friend settling into a soft chair. And as we drift into this calm place, the ancient world hums its lullaby of forgotten footsteps and fading ink. In this serene dusk of memory, let us wander lightly through time, where every breeze feels slower and every shadow glides with ease. Here the past does not shout or demand attention. It simply drifts near us like a warm lantern floating down a calm river. The world of early China stretches wide and unhurried, breathing in gentle tones, brushing away the dust of centuries with quiet, unassuming grace. The landscapes of antiquity settle themselves beneath a sleepy sky. Mountains lean back as though ready for a long rest, and rivers murmur their steady, comforting rhythms. Human footsteps, soft and unhurried, weave through forests and across plains where stories were born long before paper or ink ever existed. Life moved slowly then, slow enough to notice the curl of a leaf, the bend of a branch, the impression of an animal's foot pressed into the earth. It was a time when observation was not a skill, but a way of existing, a peaceful partnership with nature itself. And within this hushed world lived figures who, over the centuries, have been painted in the soft glow of legend. Their names travel through history like drifting clouds, never too bright, never too sharp, just gentle shapes against a quiet sky. These legendary individuals wandered through life with an attentiveness that feels almost musical, their days unfolding with the calm rhythm of someone who had all the time in the world. Among them stood the ancient emperor, often said to have guided early civilization towards structure and understanding. In stories told by firesides and whispered under moonlight, he is described as thoughtful and observant, a figure who noticed patterns in the world and nudged society toward order. These tales, though embroidered by centuries, carry a tender charm. They show us a leader who seemed to stroll through life in a slower tempo, pausing long enough to appreciate small wisdoms that others may have passed by. And beside him, in these drifting legends, was a man whose eyes were said to be as sharp as a crane's, and whose curiosity never slept. A figure whose mind wandered as widely as the horizon. His days were filled with observing the world, kneeling in soft soil to study the marks left behind by animals, tracing the graceful lines of branches and streams, comparing shapes, drawing meanings, imagining connections. One can almost picture him squinting at an odd-shaped footprint and thinking, with a sleepy smile, "Well, that looks like something worth writing down." Though these stories float somewhere between myth and imagination, they offer a gentle warmth, as if reminding us that creativity often begins in simple noticing, watching the world with quiet affection. Whether or not these ancient figures truly walked the earth exactly as described is less important than the peaceful imagery they leave behind. A world where writing began not with loud declarations, but with soft footsteps, careful observation, and a patient heart. So let us rest in this tranquil glow for a moment longer, letting these drifting tales carry us into a calm understanding. The origins of writing, whether shaped by legends or layered through time, always feel like a warm breeze brushing through the pages of history. Never rushed, never heavy, simply moving with the steady comfort of a world discovering its own voice. As we settle deeper into this gentle landscape of old stories, we arrive at one of the most enduring legends in early Chinese tradition, the tale of how Chinese characters first came to life. This legend, soft around the edges and carried quietly through generations, tells of a moment when humans looked at the world with such attentive curiosity that symbols began to form naturally from what they saw. It is a story that lingers somewhere between imagination and cultural memory, inviting us to drift closer and listen. In this tale, the ancient emperor, often admired in folklore as a wise guide, played a symbolic role in shaping the early direction of civilization, but the heart of the legend rests with his meticulous historian, a man whose days were spent observing the shapes of clouds, the tracks of animals, the patterns found in leaves, and the movements of creatures crossing the land. With a mind both peaceful and alert, he began to sketch meaning from these traces, turning impressions into symbols and symbols into the earliest forms of writing. The story does not try to hurry or impress. It unfolds like a soft melody humming through time. Its charm lies not in accuracy, but in the quiet poetry of imagining how humans once transformed the world around them into marks of understanding. Whether fully true or beautifully embellished, the legend invites us to wander slowly through history, exploring how the first ideas of writing may have gently taken shape. Chapter 1: The Opening Space, an Ancient World Moving Slowly. Sleep tone, soothing, gentle, soft humor, describing the slow, ancient world before writing. The ancient world breathes like a long, unbroken sigh, wrapped in a softness so complete that every movement seems to drift rather than happen. In this early age, before symbols, before carved marks, before lines of meaning stretched across bone or silk, the world feels wide and unhurried, as though time itself has chosen to settle into a calm rhythm. People live lightly in this landscape of slow mornings, quiet afternoons, and warm, lingering evenings. No one rushes, no one panics, no one worries about forgetting something written on a piece of paper, because paper itself is a distant dream. Life unfolds like a gentle stream sliding over round stones. Nothing pushes it forward, nothing pulls it back. It simply moves, smooth and natural, with a peaceful confidence that the world will take care of itself. Villagers wake with the sun stretching lazily as light spills across the land. They rise not because a clock demands it, but because their bodies softly suggest that the day might be ready to begin. The sky glows in pale colors, and the air carries the delicate scent of morning dew. Everything feels unhurried, as though the universe has promised never to rush anyone. People walk through their day with the untroubled pace of drifting clouds. There is a gentle slowness in every task, gathering water, tending fires, preparing meals, weaving baskets, shaping tools. Work happens, but always in its own time. Even children move with a dreamy kind of curiosity, exploring the world as though each pebble, each leaf, each curl of smoke deserves a long moment of quiet attention. Their games are simple, requiring no written rules and no complicated equipment. A few sticks, a patch of dirt, or a cluster of smooth stones are enough to inspire entire adventures. Memory rules everything here. It is the great library everyone carries inside their mind. Stories, recipes, directions, promises, jokes, all stored in the gentle folds of thought. When someone forgets something, they simply smile, shrug, and say, "The wind must have stolen the memory." The wind, patient and mild, becomes the unofficial scapegoat of the entire village. It never argues, it never complains. People continue, unbothered, weaving new memories to replace the old ones they misplaced. This dependence on memory gives life a soft kind of comedy. Imagine two elders sitting beneath a tree, telling a familiar story. One insists a great hunt happened during a heavy rain, while the other claims it happened in the bright blaze of summer. Neither is correct, or perhaps both are correct, depending on the day. The listeners nod politely, amused by the gentle disagreement. Without written proof, no one worries about being wrong. Truth, in this time, is something that bends gracefully like tall grass in the breeze. Nature provides endless material for observation. A set of deer tracks inspires quiet wonder. A fallen feather invites speculation. A crooked tree branch sparks curiosity about the animals that brushed against it. People read the world as though it is already writing to them, even though they have not yet imagined the possibility of writing back. Every mark in the soil, every ripple in the stream, every shifting cloud is a subtle message that encourages reflection rather than urgency. Meals are peaceful gatherings. Families sit near small fires, sharing warm food and soft laughter. Someone might describe an amusing incident from earlier in the day. Perhaps they walked the wrong way and ended up circling the same tree 3 times. Everyone laughs kindly, not mocking the person, but celebrating the small silliness of life. Forgetfulness is not a flaw. It is simply a natural part of living in a world without notes, lists, or reminders. As the sun sinks, the world settles even deeper into tranquility. Warm colors stretch across the sky, blending like soft brush strokes. Shadows lengthen, the air cools, and villagers return to their huts with an easy, satisfied quietness. Night is a time of conversation, storytelling, and gentle reflection. The crackle of firewood adds texture to the darkness, while the stars appear above like tiny sparks of ancient wisdom watching over the land. Stories float through the night air, shared from memory, passed between generations like precious, delicate treasures. Without writing, every tale is alive, shifting, evolving, adapting to the teller's breath. Details expand or shrink, characters appear or vanish, and events reorganize themselves with dreamlike flexibility. Listeners do not seek accuracy. They seek comfort. They seek connection. They seek the slow, soothing rhythm of words spoken by someone they trust. Everything in this unwritten world is soft. Everything is patient. Everything drifts toward its place without force. This is the cradle of human imagination, the warm, ancient breath before symbols begin to bloom. And from this peaceful foundation, the journey toward writing will eventually rise, but not yet. For now, the world rests, calm and quiet, at the edge of a story still waiting to be shaped. As night fully embraces the ancient settlement, the world settles into an even deeper layer of calm. The firelight softens, glowing like a quiet heartbeat at the center of the village. People draw closer to the warmth, wrapped in woven blankets, their bodies relaxing after a day shaped by gentle rhythms. The slow flicker of flames paints sleepy patterns on the walls of their huts, as if the night itself is whispering lullabies through drifting sparks. In this soft darkness, the final hours of the day unfold like a long, soothing melody. Children curl beside parents, listening to the soft murmur of voices drifting through the air. Dogs lie near the fire, breathing steadily, their tails twitching occasionally in some peaceful dream. The elders continue their stories, voices low and steady, carrying the weight of generations without ever feeling heavy. Their words rise and fall like waves brushing the shore, never rushing, never straining, always moving at the pace of ancient wind. Each sentence is a warm thread, weaving everyone together in quiet unity. In this world without writing, stories are not fixed. They float gently, shifting when needed, adapting to the mood of the night. One elder might add a new character to a familiar tale, claiming the person had always been there. Another might shorten a long sequence, perhaps forgetting an important moment but filling the gap with a wise-sounding hum. No one corrects these changes. Instead, listeners smile softly, enjoying the way stories transform, like shadows dancing on the walls. The past is not rigid here. It is soft, like moss under bare feet. The night sky stretches above, vast and shimmering. Stars scatter across it like glowing seeds, tossed by a wandering celestial hand. The moon hangs quietly, bathing the land in silver calm. Its light slides across rooftops, brushes the tops of grass, glides along the river, and rests gently on the dreaming faces of villagers. Everything feels connected under this serene canopy. The world holds stillness like a precious gift. As the wind drifts softly through trees, carrying scents of earth and smoke, it feels as though the land itself is dreaming. Somewhere in the forest, an owl calls out, not sharply, but with a muffled softness that fits the mood of the night. Leaves rustle with a delicate whisper, and the river hums its steady nighttime song. These sounds become a natural symphony, steady and soothing, guiding everyone toward rest. Inside their simple dwellings, families settle down fully. Some share quiet conversations about the day, reflecting on small triumphs or amusing missteps. Someone might mention a moment of forgetfulness, and the room warms with gentle laughter. Others sit silently, enjoying the peaceful company of loved ones. Silence here is never awkward. It is a comfort, a shared embrace. The embers in the fire glow deeper, shifting from orange to soft red. They pulse gently as though breathing. The elders' stories slow down, words stretching longer between pauses. Eventually, even the storytellers fall quiet. The fire hums, the world hums. Sleep drapes itself over the settlement like a warm, star-stitched blanket. This is the world before writing, soft, slow, and deeply human. A world shaped by memory, held together by shared warmth, and carried forward by stories that drift like feathers on the wind. And though no one yet imagines the symbols that will one day capture meaning, the foundations are already here, resting quietly in the calm awareness of people who watch, listen, and feel the patterns around them. As the last sparks fade and the night grows fully still, the ancient land prepares to dream. Its dreams are simple, flowing rivers, wandering animals, warm fires, soft voices, gentle laughter. In the heart of this peaceful darkness, the seeds of future writing sleep, waiting for the right moment to awaken and begin shaping the world in ways these early people cannot yet imagine. In this deep and unbroken quiet, imagination drifts freely, unconfined by ink or carved lines. Dreams wander through the minds of the sleeping villagers, weaving gentle visions of endless plains, tall mountains, and distant horizons touched by warm sunlight. Sometimes their dreams carry familiar faces. Other times, they bring playful fragments of stories heard around the fire. In these peaceful visions, the world feels both enormous and lovingly small, holding every person with the same tender embrace. Far beyond the village, forests sway softly, as though rocking the night itself to sleep. Even the distant hills seem to breathe, releasing the day with a long, satisfied sigh. And as all these quiet pieces settle into place, the world glows with a serenity that feels timeless. The gentle balance of nature, memory, and shared presence wraps everything in a soft hush. Nothing presses forward, nothing pulls away. The night simply exists, calm and complete, holding space for the earliest whispers of human creativity, waiting patiently for the dawn that will rise and carry these ancient lives into another slow, beautiful. Chapter 2. The Yellow Emperor in Legend. The Symbolic Origin of Writing. The story of the Yellow Emperor begins the way soft, ancient tales always do, beside a warm fire, beneath a slow sky, and within a world where time drifts rather than marches. The flames crackle gently, sending small sparks upward as if tiny stars are being returned to the night. The villagers gather close, wrapped in the comfort of woven blankets, and the storyteller clears their throat softly, preparing to unveil a legend that has wandered through countless generations. It is not a harsh legend, not a tale of battle or thunder, but a gentle one, shaped by quiet admiration and a touch of playful exaggeration. In the sleep-slow rhythm of this old world, the Yellow Emperor is introduced not as a conqueror, but as a serene figure who noticed the world deeply enough for others to believe he must have started the path toward writing. He appears in these stories as a calm presence who walked across misty fields with unhurried steps, studying clouds as though they were scrolls drifting overhead. The storyteller describes him with a voice so soft that even the wind leans closer to listen. According to tradition, he carried no grand symbols, no written commands, because writing had not yet taken shape. Instead, he carried observation, the kind of gentle attention that lingers longer than thought. Children lean in, imagining the Yellow Emperor strolling through the ancient landscape, humming quietly as he studied the world around him. As the storyteller continues, a playful smile appears. Of course, they say, the Yellow Emperor has been credited with so many inventions that if he truly did everything attributed to him, he must have been the busiest man on earth. The villagers chuckle softly, the kind of laughter that rises like drifting smoke and disappears just as gently. Someone adds, in a whisper just loud enough for others to hear, that some versions of the legend claim he invented not only governance and medicine, but also clothing, music, tools, calendars, and possibly even the first polite greeting. The children grin, imagining the Yellow Emperor shaking hands with confused villagers who had no idea why they were being greeted so formally. The storyteller lifts a hand and wiggles their fingers in amusement. And if the legends grew just a little longer, they say, I'm sure someone would insist he invented the world's first convenience store too. The villagers laugh again, quietly, so as not to disturb the owls perched above. No one takes the exaggerations seriously, but everyone enjoys the warmth they bring. The humor is soft, never sharp, as if the tales themselves know the Yellow Emperor is not meant to be a literal figure, but a comforting symbol. Beneath the laughter, however, a gentle truth settles in. The Yellow Emperor is not celebrated for specific historical achievements. Instead, he stands as the symbolic dawn of a cultural journey, the moment when people felt the need to place the beginning of writing somewhere. He becomes the poetic first step, the figure positioned at the horizon of civilization, so that later, generations could look back and say, "It started there," in that distant age of quiet wonder. His presence in these stories is like the glow before sunrise, not the sun itself, but the soft signal that illumination is coming. The storyteller explains that life during the Yellow Emperor's era flowed with the same slow softness described in the earlier chapter. There were no characters carved into bone, no brush strokes inked onto silk, no written treaties or recorded names. Knowledge lived in the breath of those who spoke it. Stories wandered, adjusted, and reshaped themselves each time they were told. The Yellow Emperor's symbolic role was not to write, but to represent awakening. The world beginning to recognize patterns. Villagers close their eyes, picturing him walking through valleys, noting the curve of a riverbank or the branching lines of a leaf. The storyteller suggests that his calm, observant presence gently encouraged people to open their eyes wider, to study nature with a depth that might someday lead to symbols. The children imagine him standing beneath a tree, watching an ant trail with such concentration that even the ants might have paused and wondered whether he was studying them or simply daydreaming. Night deepens around the village as the tale continues. The fire flickers in soft gold rhythms, and the storyteller's voice settles into a tender whisper. They explain that in these legends, the Yellow Emperor's wisdom did not come from writing anything down, but from paying attention long enough for meaning to take root. People began to sense that shapes carried messages, that patterns whispered hints, and that the world itself seemed eager to be understood. The storyteller emphasizes that these tales are not meant to be taken literally. They are metaphors, woven by ancestors who wanted to place a peaceful and steady guide at the beginning of a long cultural path. Around the fire, heads nod in drowsy agreement. The Yellow Emperor becomes not a man, but a symbol of stillness, curiosity, and beginnings. Whether he truly inspired the creation of writing does not matter as much as the feeling he carries. Like a lantern held gently at the threshold of human expression, shining just enough light to suggest the promise of what might come. As the fire settled into a gentle glow, the storyteller took a slow breath, letting the warmth of the night seep into their words. The tale of the Yellow Emperor drifted forward like a soft current, moving easily through the minds of the listeners who rested around the dim circle of light. The storyteller described how the Yellow Emperor, in many legends, was believed to embody the quiet beginning of understanding, the first calm spark that encouraged people to observe the world with greater care. Though he did not carve symbols or record thoughts, his presence in the stories was like a steady lantern, illuminating the early path toward meaning, People imagined him wandering through ancient landscapes with unhurried steps, touching the bark of trees, tracing patterns in the soil, and tilting his head at the sky as if waiting for the clouds to reveal their hidden messages. This gentle curiosity became a symbol for the earliest shift toward writing, not through invention but through awareness. Yet the storyteller made sure to keep the mood light, reminding everyone that legends often grow larger than the people within them. The Yellow Emperor, they said, sometimes receives credit for so many accomplishments that he resembles a mythical multitasker rather than a historical leader. One humorous tale suggested he once organized an early council meeting so calmly that the participants forgot what they were debating and simply enjoyed the snack they had prepared. Another playful tale imagined him advising villagers on how to store grain, only for them to remember the advice differently each season, leading to a cycle of charming confusion that lasted for years. These gentle jokes added warmth to the story, allowing listeners to appreciate the symbolic nature of the Yellow Emperor without burdening him with literal responsibilities. The storyteller continued, explaining that in ancient lore, the Yellow Emperor's true gift was his ability to inspire others to think, observe, and connect. He did not force knowledge upon anyone. Instead, he created an atmosphere in which curiosity could bloom naturally. People began noticing animal tracks more closely, studying how water carved paths through the earth, and paying attention to the shifting shapes of shadows throughout the day. This quiet shift in attention, the storyteller emphasized, was more important than any single invention. It marked the moment when humanity began to sense that ideas could be held, shaped, and passed on. The villagers listening around the fire felt this message settle upon them like a soft blanket. They imagined the Yellow Emperor kneeling beside a shallow stream, watching leaves float by as though they carried secret meanings. They pictured him sitting beneath a tree, listening to the wind rustle through the branches, interpreting each sound as a clue about the world's hidden structure. Even if these images were only symbolic, they helped create a gentle sense of continuity with the past. The storyteller's voice lowered as they explained that these legends do not claim the Yellow Emperor invented writing. Instead, they assign him to the beginning of the timeline because every story needs a symbolic threshold. Without such a figure, the arrival of writing would feel abrupt, disconnected from the world that shaped it. But by placing the Yellow Emperor at the start, the story of writing becomes more like a slow dawn, rising steadily over an ancient landscape. The night around the villagers deepened, and the crackling of the fire softened into a whisper. The storyteller spoke of how the Yellow Emperor's calm leadership created pockets of peaceful thought, where early observers could begin forming the ideas that would one day become symbols. Scholars in later generations looked back and chose him as a poetic anchor, not because he carved the first character, but because he represented the beginning of attention. Attention to patterns, attention to nature, attention to meaning. The villagers nodded sleepily, letting the soft story wash over them. They felt the presence of the Yellow Emperor as a gentle guide, not a ruler of force, but a figure who walked slowly enough for others to follow with ease. His legend was soothing, steady, and filled with the kind of humor that made the ancient world feel warm rather than distant. Stories of him losing track of time while admiring a mountain, or forgetting what he was saying because he became distracted by a drifting cloud, only made listeners smile. These small human moments helped bridge the gap between myth and everyday life. As the story drew to a close, the storyteller reminded everyone that these tales were meant to comfort, not to instruct. They were woven from imagination, shaped by centuries of soft voices, and passed down because they carried a sense of peaceful beginning. The Yellow Emperor's role in the origin of writing, symbolic as it was, helped listeners feel connected to a long chain of curiosity stretching through time. Writing, the storyteller said, did not suddenly appear. It emerged from countless small moments of looking closely, thinking quietly, and wondering gently. The Yellow Emperor simply stands at the front of that line, holding a lantern whose glow is calm enough to lull even the modern mind into restful thought. Chapter 3. Cangjie, the Observer of All Things. Cangjie walked through the ancient world with a softness that felt almost unreal, as if he were a silent breeze drifting across early Earth. Every step he took seemed unhurried, measured, touched gently by a sense of quiet curiosity. In those days, before writing existed in any form, the world felt as though it moved at half speed, as though every moment wanted to linger, stretch, and breathe. And within that slow-flowing time, Cangjie became known as the man whose eyes noticed everything, every track in the dirt, every twist of bark, every flutter of wings, every small detail the earth whispered into view. People often said he possessed eyes that could hear the world, a gentle exaggeration told with warm laughter around evening fires. But in truth, his gaze held a depth that made even the smallest pebble feel meaningful. Each morning, he wandered out with no specific destination, no office to report to, no written list of tasks, no meetings besides the ones arranged by birds, hills, and shifting winds. If freelancing existed in ancient times, then Cangjie was its unofficial founder. He worked outdoors, set his own schedule, and seemed to be on a lifelong creative project nobody else fully understood. On some days, the villagers would spot him crouching beside a trail, studying the delicate imprint of a deer's hoof. He tilted his head like an artist judging the composition of a painting, then let out a soft sigh, the kind reserved for someone falling in love with a shape only nature could make. "Beautiful," he would murmur. "I should keep this." Of course, the ground could not preserve it forever. A breeze, a passing animal, or a stray drop of rain would erase the mark within hours. The villagers often teased him for admiring things destined to disappear, but he only smiled, because part of him felt grateful. Beauty that came and went so quickly made him pay closer attention. Cangjie's world was full of such beautiful vanishing things, bird tracks that zigzagged across sand before the tide swallowed them, patterns on stones carved slowly by generations of wind, the branching veins of leaves pressed flat beneath his hand. The universe offered endless designs, all silent yet expressive. To Cangjie, each mark hinted at meaning, at story, at movement, at identity. He felt as though the earth itself spoke through these shapes, using footprints and ripples and shadows as letters in a forgotten language. The villagers loved him for his gentle strangeness. They would tell newcomers, "There goes Cangjie again, holding conversations with rocks," and then laugh softly, not out of mockery, but fondness. His presence made the village feel richer, as though the world gained more depth, simply because he noticed things others overlooked. Sometimes children followed him secretly, mimicking his slow, graceful walk. When he suddenly turned and smiled at them, they would giggle and run away, pretending they were not fascinated by the strange man who studied dirt for inspiration. His moments of inspiration often looked peculiar to others. One afternoon, after hours of exploring a forest path, Cangjie discovered a set of overlapping bird footprints forming a shape that reminded him of flowing motion. His eyes widened. He knelt for so long that a squirrel climbed onto his shoulder, mistaking him for part of the scenery. When the villagers passed by and saw him sitting frozen like a statue, they exchanged amused glances. "He's composing again," one of them whispered. "Let him be. That's when his brain starts drawing pictures none of us can see." But Cangjie was not simply admiring the tracks. He was studying their structure, the way each line curved, the way each claw pressed differently into the earth. He felt a tug inside him, a quiet longing to represent this shape in a way that could survive beyond this moment. He picked up a stick and traced the pattern beside him, simplifying it gently, reducing the bird's print into strokes that hinted at the original while becoming something new. The simplified version felt like a whisper of the world, a small mark that still carried meaning. This was how his earliest symbols were born, not out of intention or ambition, but out of quiet translation. He was not copying nature, he was understanding it. And slowly, gently, the idea took hold. Maybe humans could learn to speak with marks, not drawings, not pictures, but symbols. Simple, meaningful, lasting. Cangjie's quiet revolution did not begin with grand declarations. It unfolded like mist on the surface of a river, softly, gradually, almost shyly. Yet the villagers soon noticed a subtle shift in the way he moved through the world. His steps grew slower, his pauses longer, his gaze deeper. It was as if every mark nature left behind whispered a new possibility to him. Footprints, cracks on dry soil, drifting feathers, curling vines, the way branches forked in deliberate angles, each offered clues, patterns, and quiet invitations. He began arranging symbols outside his hut, drawing them into the earth with the precision of someone tuning an instrument. Children gathered around him each morning, waiting eagerly to see if he had created something new. Some found the symbols amusing. "This one looks like a sleepy bird," a child would cry, while another insisted, "No, it's a crooked mountain." Cangjie simply smiled, enjoying their interpretations because each guess showed that the symbol was doing its job, sparking meaning. Adults approached more cautiously, standing at a distance with arms folded. They weren't sure what these shapes were supposed to do, but even the most skeptical villager eventually leaned in, tracing the strokes slowly, feeling something stir behind the simple lines. The symbols were not drawings. They carried something lighter, something conceptual, something newly alive. And still, Cangjie wandered daily, collecting the world's lines with the patience of someone gathering fallen petals. One moment he was observing the jagged path of a beetle scratching across dry mud. The next, he was tracing the silhouette of a distant mountain peak. He spent afternoons beneath quiet trees, testing strokes in the dirt, rubbing them out, adjusting angles, simplifying curves. His work had no blueprint, no rules, no guides, only intuition, nature, and a quiet sense of becoming. People joked affectionately that he was the busiest unemployed man in the world. "Look at him," one elder teased, "working harder than a farmer and yet nobody pays him except the wind. Another chimed in, he's probably going to invoice the clouds for inspiration one day. Even Cangjie laughed softly at those remarks, gently brushing dust from his hands. If the clouds paid me, he murmured, I would ask for more shapes, not more coins. As the seasons shifted, his symbols multiplied. What began as a handful of marks grew into dozens, then hundreds. Some represented creatures, deer, birds, insects, while others captured ideas, movement, danger, shelter, brightness. The villagers began using a few symbols themselves, scratching them onto bark or drawing them beside their doors. They found comfort in the simplicity, the clarity, the delicate beauty of a world turned into strokes. One evening during a quiet twilight, Cangjie stood on a small hill overlooking the village. The breeze was soft, carrying faint scents of grass and earth. Below him, the villagers still moved about their nightly chores, unaware that they were living inside a turning point. Cangjie watched the smoke curling upward from their fires, the soft glow of lamps being lit, the shadows settling across their roofs. For a moment, he felt the world open inside him, vast, whispering, full of patterns ready to be translated. He knelt and drew a new symbol, shaped from a combination of bird tracks and river curves. He studied it thoughtfully, letting the strokes settle into place. This one felt right, calm, steady, balanced. He brushed away dust to refine a line, then exhaled softly, satisfied. The world, it seemed, had given him another small truth to hold. Word of his symbols eventually drifted beyond the village, carried by travelers who had seen the strange marks etched into the earth. Some visitors arrived curious and hopeful, others skeptical or confused, but all left with the same sense of wonder. They had seen someone collecting the world, not through baskets or tools, but through lines of meaning. Cangjie greeted each visitor with warmth, offering explanations in the soft tone of someone sharing a fire on a quiet night. As more symbols took shape, he realized something remarkable. Writing was not merely about recording, it was about noticing. It was the art of slowing down enough to see patterns most people rushed past. It was the act of giving shape to experience, allowing moments to linger beyond memory's fragile grasp. The villagers soon adopted these symbols in practical ways. Hunters scratched animal signs before leaving, marking the direction they headed. Families carved the symbol for home above their doorway. Children drew the symbol for play in the dirt before chasing each other in circles. Little by little, Cangjie's creations became woven into the rhythms of daily life, offering a gentle anchor for thought. But in quiet moments, alone under the stars, he understood the deeper purpose. Writing was a gift he was giving to the future, a way for people far beyond his time to understand the world he had loved so dearly. The fireflies blinked around him. The night hummed softly. And Cangjie whispered to the darkness, "May these marks help someone remember what the world once tried to say." Chapter 4: The Age of Oracle Bones and the Stories. Carved in Silence. The era of oracle bones unfolds like a slow breath drawn from the deep past. It is a time when writing still sleeps in the earth, waiting for human hands to wake it. In the quiet world of the Shang dynasty around 1800 BCE, people turn to bone and shell to hold their questions. Each piece carries a calm, ancient gravity, as though the earth itself has agreed to lend its surface for silent conversations. Before ink and silk, before smooth scrolls and rhythmic brushstrokes, writing lives in the firm textures of turtle plastrons and ox scapulae. These bones feel cool beneath the fingers, smooth in some places, coarse in others. Their surfaces become the first canvas for characters that are not yet fully formed. Each line carved into them is deliberate, slow, attentive, like someone whispering to the future through tiny marks. Imagine stepping into an archaeological room centuries later where these bones now rest. The air is still thick with the softness of dust that drifts lazily whenever a box is opened. Light falls in narrow shafts from tall windows, settling gently across tables stacked with yellowed notes and careful sketches. The silence feels dense enough to touch. Only the quiet rustle of cotton gloves or the faint thump of a closing book dares to disturb the room. In one corner, an archaeologist lifts a turtle shell with the tenderness of someone cradling a sleeping bird. The shell curves in their hands like a pale crescent moon. Faint carvings stretch across its surface, thin, steady strokes pressed thousands of years ago. The archaeologist leans closer, not to disturb the markings, but to understand them. A single breath escapes, filled with the soft amazement that always greets the ancient world. It is easy to imagine the scribes who once carved these symbols. Perhaps they sat in lamplit rooms where shadows wavered across the walls. Maybe they worked outdoors, surrounded by the earthy smells of soil and smoke. Their tools were simple, held with focus, their movements slow and thoughtful. Each question carved into bone carried the hopes of a king or a village. Each symbol felt like a small flame kept alive against the wind. But there is gentle humor in this history as well. Those ancient scribes likely never imagined that their practical marks would one day be displayed behind protective glass, admired by crowds of scholars and tourists. If they could see the reverence with which their bones are handled now, they might raise an eyebrow and mutter, "I carved that just to check the weather, not to create national treasure." One can almost hear the soft laughter that would follow. The oracle bones were used in rituals that moved with calm precision. A question was carved into the bone was warmed over fire. Cracks appeared, branching like tiny trees or lightning frozen mid-stride. Diviners read these cracks with practiced eyes, tracing meaning along every line. To them, the bones spoke clearly. To us, they speak only in silence. But the silence feels full, rich, patient. Back in the archaeological room, each fragment tells its own quiet story. Some bones speak of harvests, predicting crops in seasons long vanished. Others mention illness, dreams, or journeys. Still others ask about storms or battles. The characters etched into the surfaces resemble tiny drawings, simple, almost childlike, yet carrying enormous meaning. These marks are the ancestors of modern writing, carrying the first attempts to shape language into visible form. As dust is brushed away from newly discovered pieces, the room seems to hold its breath. Every fragment uncovered feels like a message resurfacing after thousands of years. The early characters invite gentle curiosity. Their lines curve like bird tracks or stretch like branches reaching upward. They hint at a time when writing was not yet rigid or standardized. It was exploratory, forming slowly like a melody played by someone learning an instrument for the first time. The archaeologists work with deliberate calm, tracing the evolution of strokes, comparing symbols across collections. Their voices remain soft, respectful. Every so often, someone pauses to marvel at how thin some carvings are, thin enough to vanish if handled carelessly. The bones themselves rest quietly beneath warm lights, as though content to finally be understood again. And as one stands in that room, surrounded by ancient fragments and tender silence, it becomes clear that these oracle bones are more than artifacts. They are the earliest storytellers. They carry whispers etched in heat, carved in patience, preserved in earth. They remind us that writing began not with flourish or showmanship, but with quiet questions and steady hands, willing to carve meaning into the simplest of materials. The story of oracle bones stretches far beyond the quiet museums and gentle archaeological rooms. To follow their path fully, one must step back into the world where they were carved, heated, cracked, and read with calm devotion. The Shang dynasty moved with an unhurried rhythm, a pace shaped by seasons, harvests, and the steady patience of those who believed that understanding came slowly, like dawn unfolding across the horizon. In the open courtyards, where diviners worked, the air often carried the warm scent of earth and smoke. Turtle shells lay soaking in water to prepare them for carving. Ox bones dried under the sun, pale and strong. The tools of the diviners, slim blades, small hammers, simple awls, rested neatly on woven mats. Nothing about the scene felt rushed. The work, meant to bridge the human world and the unseen, required a stillness that seeped into every gesture. A diviner would lift a bone with gentle hands, turning it slowly, as though greeting an old friend. The surface was smoothed, inspected, and cleaned of any rough patches. Then came the carving. Each question, about weather, crops, illness, or fortune, was pressed into the bone with deliberate strokes. The characters at this early stage looked simple, almost shy, like young versions of the scripts that would blossom centuries later. But even then, they carried meaning, shape, and the quiet dignity of a language in its earliest breath. Before long, the bone was ready for fire. Flames curled upward beneath a clay stand, crackling softly like a lullaby. The diviner held the bone near the heat, waiting for the first crack to appear. A sharp sound broke the silence, a soft snap, gentle yet full of significance. More cracks followed, branching like delicate trees across the surface. These patterns, formed through heat and tension, revealed messages to those who knew how to read them. The diviners listened with their eyes, tracing each line with serene concentration. To modern scholars, the cracks appear chaotic, tiny fractures born from fire. But to the diviners of old, they were a dialogue. They were the world responding, the unseen speaking back. The process may sound dramatic now, yet in those moments everything unfolded with a tranquil ease. Even the heat of the fire seemed to move slowly, as if respecting the ceremony. If one imagines transporting these ancient diviners into a modern archaeological laboratory, the resulting contrast becomes quietly amusing. They might wander among rows of labeled boxes, peering at climate-controlled cabinets with puzzled expressions. Someone would explain that these bones were now national treasures, preserved with meticulous care. A diviner might scratch their head and say, "Treasures? That one told us it would rain. We almost used it to prop up a cooking pot." The humor lies not in ridicule, but in gentle irony. Ordinary objects transformed into priceless history. Meanwhile, in the actual labs, researchers work with a serenity that mirrors the old rituals. They compare symbols, examine crack patterns, photograph surfaces, and record each detail in careful notebooks. Soft brushes sweep across the bones. moving in slow arcs that resemble strokes of air. Every gesture carries the awareness that they are touching fragments of a world that once breathed under different skies. Even the lighting is subdued, as though bright lamps might disturb the bone's long rest. Some characters carved into the bones resemble outlines of animals: birds with simple beaks, deer with branching horns, fish marked by a single flowing curve. Others represent ideas: sun, rain, journey, danger. These early forms feel almost musical in their simplicity. They hum softly, each line shaped by hands that worked with deliberate calm. It is easy to see how writing emerged from such steady observation. Each mark was a small attempt to hold a fleeting thought still long enough to revisit later. Night often fell while researchers continued their quiet studies. Lamplight pooled over tables, illuminating the ancient carvings like small constellations scattered across pale surfaces. Outside, the world moved fast, cars rushing, voices rising, neon signs glowing. But inside the lab, time thickened. Silence settled. The bones sat peacefully, patient as always, offering their stories to those willing to read slowly. The researchers' shadows stretched and softened, echoing the ancient scribes who once bent over these same symbols. Some nights, a researcher would pause and chuckle to themselves, imagining how the ancient diviners might react to this reverence. They would laugh at us, the researcher might whisper. They would say we worry too much. But the laughter is warm, affectionate, a reminder that history often elevates the simple acts of ordinary people into monumental milestones. As dawn approached, the bones seemed almost to glow under the last traces of lamplight. The carved characters, softened by centuries, shone with a quiet presence. They remained doorways to another world, gateways into a time when writing was young and the earth itself served as paper. Their silent stories bridged 3,000 years, proving that meaning carved with care can outlast empires, kingdoms, and the rise and fall of countless generations. The Age of Oracle Bones stands as a peaceful chapter in the long journey of writing. It is carved in patience, warmed in fire, and preserved through silence. Even now, as researchers lean over these fragments with gentle hands, the bones seem to whisper in return. They remind us that writing began not as a flourish of genius, but as a slow, thoughtful act, a way to ask questions, to listen for answers, and to leave behind marks that could speak long after the voices themselves had faded. Chapter 5. The Birth of Pictographs. When ancient lines learn to look like the world. The earliest days of writing unfold like a soft dawn drifting across the quiet world. Before systems and structures existed, there were only simple drawings, gentle sketches inspired by nature. Ancient people looked at mountains, rivers, the sun, and the silhouettes of animals and thought, why not draw them as they are? From that peaceful curiosity, pictographs were born, shaped by steady hands and clear eyes. The sun appeared as a round circle with a dot resting in its center, warm and bright even in its simplest form. Mountains rose as stacked triangles, charmingly uneven. Rivers flowed as bending lines, curling like soft ribbons caught in a mild breeze. People became simple shapes too, sometimes just sticks and circles, but always full of a quiet pride. Nothing about these drawings felt forced. They were the earliest forms of expression, the first emojis, drawn long before anyone knew such a word could exist. Imagine holding one of these early symbols. Its lines are faint, carved or brushed onto bamboo or bone. The strokes feel unhurried, as if drawn by someone who had all the time in the world. These were not made to impress. They were made to remember, to preserve a moment of seeing, a moment of feeling. The world in those days moved slowly, with a rhythm patient enough to let every detail sink in. Picture an ancient scribe sitting beside a riverbank. The water hums softly, the earth smells warm and full. A fish flicks above the surface, just a shimmer, just a breath. Later, the scribe sketches the fish, a curve, a tail, a line that seems almost alive. It is not an exact drawing, but it holds the essence of what was seen. These pictographs were born from gentle observation, not perfection. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, someone carved a simple circle. When rain fell in slender streaks, a string of lines took shape. When a path twisted through the valley, someone captured it in a flowing curve. These pictographs were windows, tiny openings into the world as ancient eyes saw it. To look at them today is to feel the softness of those early moments, to sense the calm that shaped each line. Even children in these early times understood pictographs instantly. They saw a drawing of a tree and recognized a tree. They pointed at a symbol of a bird and chirped in excitement. Sometimes they copied the symbols in the dirt, producing crooked but enthusiastic versions. Adults watched amusedly, knowing that every child was unknowingly practicing to become part of a future writing tradition. Life in these villages needed these symbols. People painted them on jars to mark grain, carved them into wood to identify tools, or etched them into stones to guide travelers. The symbols required no explanation. If you saw the drawing of water, you knew it meant water. If you saw a sun, you recognized daylight. If you saw the pictograph of a person, you felt the gesture of humanity captured in a few strokes. The early scribes treated their symbols with a gentle humor. If someone misinterpreted a drawing, they laughed softly and explained it again. If a pictograph looked too stiff, they added a curve. If a mountain looked too flat, they reshaped it carefully. Nothing about this early writing was rigid. Everything was fluid, like ink drifting in water. Pictographs also became a part of storytelling. At night, by the flicker of the fire, storytellers used drawings to guide their tales. A sun marked the beginning of the story. A walking figure marked a journey. A cluster of lines marked rain falling, soft and slow. Children drifted to sleep listening to these stories, watching symbols glow under firelight. The pictographs became little lullabies, visual notes sung into the night. Even emotions found their way into the symbols. A curved line might mean joy. A slanted shape might suggest fear. A small resting mark might represent sleep. These were the first attempts to draw feelings rather than objects. And though simple, they carried warmth. As generations passed, the pictographs multiplied like seeds scattered across fertile soil. New symbols emerged for animals, tools, shelters, and seasons. The writing system grew slowly, quietly, tenderly. Each pictograph held a fragment of observation, a piece of memory, a spark of human experience. And though writing would transform over time, these early pictographs remained the gentle roots from which everything else grew. Their simplicity still whispers to us across the centuries, reminding us that writing began with soft lines, drawn by calm hands, watching the world with wonder. As pictographs continued to develop, their shapes carried the warmth of early human curiosity. These were not rushed drawings or stiff symbols. They were soft sketches, created by people who watched their world with the patience of stargazers. Every mark felt like a small breath taken from the beauty of nature. Each stroke was laid down as though the scribe hoped not to disturb the quiet air around them. In the small villages where these symbols first blossomed, the unveiling of a new pictograph brought gentle excitement. People gathered near the scribe responsible, leaning forward with relaxed curiosity. Someone pointed and said, "That must be rain." Another guessed, "Is that a bird?" Mistakes were common, and laughter floated easily through the air. Nothing about this process felt formal. It was a shared joy, a slow, peaceful discovery of ways to make meaning visible. Children were among the most enthusiastic learners. They copied pictographs in the dirt with sticks, filling the ground with suns, trees, and tiny animals. Adults watched them fondly, shaking their heads with playful affection. No one imagined how these drawings would one day evolve into intricate characters. For now, the children simply drew what they saw. One beloved symbol was the pictograph for sun. It glowed as a perfect circle, sometimes with a dot, sometimes with rays stretching outward. When carved on bamboo, it seemed to hold warmth. The pictograph for mountain rose in jagged shapes. The symbol for tree, with its clean trunk and spreading limbs, appeared on pottery and doorway beams. These symbols were not only drawings, they were tiny reflections of the natural world carried everywhere. Travelers understood the symbols instantly. They saw the river pictograph and knew where to find water. They recognized mountains, animals, and paths. The pictographs spoke across villages without needing a shared spoken language. Their meaning was honest and open, like the world they reflected. The symbol for person evolved with special charm. First drawn as a simple stick figure, it began leaning forward, as though walking, carrying motion in its lines. People affectionately called it the little traveler, admiring how lively it looked. If ancient scribes saw our modern emojis running or waving, they might smile and recognize their own ideas reborn. Storytellers used pictographs in their nightly tales. A sun meant morning, a curved line meant wind, a walking figure meant adventure. Children drifting to sleep watched these symbols glow in firelight, blending picture and story into soft dreams. For them, pictographs were not only communication, they were comfort. Scribes experimented endlessly with their symbols. They combined simple shapes to express new ideas. A sun beside a field meant good harvest. A person beside water meant journey near the river. Two trees together hinted at forest. These combinations felt playful, like assembling building blocks. People enjoyed guessing the meanings and inventing possibilities. As pictographs spread, they grew more refined. Lines became steadier, shapes became recognizable even from a distance, but the softness of their origin remained. Every stroke held the memory of calm afternoons and slow observation. Every symbol carried the echo of a world where writing grew like a gentle song. Modern researchers look at these early symbols with fond admiration. Beneath warm lamplight, they trace the simple lines with their eyes, noticing how each stroke reflects the peace of ancient life. They smile at the charming clumsiness of some drawings and the quiet elegance of others. They see in these pictographs the first sparks of one of humanity's oldest writing traditions. pictographs remind us that writing began as art, as play, as a form of quiet noticing. It began with people who loved the world enough to draw it. It began with hands moving slowly, following the shapes of mountains, the curves of rivers, and the circles of the sun. Even now, their soft beauty continues to whisper across time, painting ancient meaning into the present, with lines gentle enough to soothe the mind. Chapter 6. The Paths of Character Creation. When meaning learned to grow from many directions. In the long, gentle evolution of Chinese writing, there came a moment when pictographs alone were no longer enough. The world had grown richer, fuller, and more layered, and people needed a way to express ideas that could not be captured by simple drawings. And so, in the soft rhythm of ancient creativity, new methods for forming characters emerged. Methods as calm, natural, and quietly clever as the people who shaped them. These methods drifted into being like different kinds of breezes, each carrying its own meaning. The first of these methods was huiyi, or combined meaning. This approach was peaceful and intuitive. It was as if a scribe placed two thoughts beside one another and allowed their meanings to merge like two tones, forming a new, gentle harmony. Imagine a scribe sitting beneath a tree, sketching the symbol for sun, then the symbol for moon, before softly smiling as they realized that the two together could represent bright. Huiyi was the art of letting meaning sprout wherever meaning naturally wished to grow. Early scribes loved huiyi because it felt like solving small puzzles made of ideas. If the symbol for wood meant a tree, then three wood symbols together meant a forest. If person appeared beside an eye, it meant to see. These small connections brought both clarity and joy. Huiyi allowed the writing system to stretch its arms a little wider, embracing concepts previously out of reach. Life moved slowly in those days. Ancient scholars likely sat together, arranging slips of bamboo, like children arranging river stones. Conversations flowed gently, each suggestion unfolding after a long, comfortable pause. Sometimes one of them would tilt their head and say, "These symbols seem to like each other," and the others would lean in, smiling softly, letting a new character bloom into existence. But huiyi could not do everything. Sometimes scribes needed to express a meaning that was impossible to draw. How does one draw want, or borrow, or become? A sun could be drawn. A mountain could be drawn. But feelings and abstract ideas drifted beyond the reach of pictures. And so another method appeared. Quietly helpful, a little mischievous, and very practical. This method was jiajie, or phonetic borrowing. If huiyi was the thoughtful scholar, jiajie was the friendly neighbor who lent you vegetables when you were cooking. The idea was simple. If two words sounded the same, a scribe could borrow a character for its sound, even if the original meaning had nothing to do with the new one. It was the ancient equivalent of saying, "Well, close enough." There is gentle humor in imagining how this began. A scribe might have stared at the bamboo for a long moment before muttering, "I cannot draw this concept, but this other character sounds similar. Let's just borrow it." And somewhere in the distance, an ancient linguist sighed without knowing why. Jiajie was not elegant, but it worked. It helped the writing system step into abstract territory, using sound as a bridge when pictures could go no further. It was like sneaking through a side door of language, quietly, politely, but with determination. Then there was Xingqiu, or semantic extension, a method as soft and natural as the spreading of tree roots. If one character already carried a meaning and a related meaning existed nearby, scribes simply extended the character's use. It was like saying, "You two are family. Stay together." Xingqiu did not force connections. Instead, it honored the gentle logic of association. If a character meant root, it could softly grow to mean origin. If a character meant hand, it could expand to include actions performed by the hand. Meaning flowed like water, adjusting its shape without breaking. Of all the methods, Xingqiu may be the most poetic. It reflected how ancient people saw the world, not as separate pieces but as intertwined relationships. Everything was connected, everything echoed something else. Characters simply followed those patterns, growing meaning the way nature grew branches. In the peaceful glow of old workshops, scribes used huiyi, jiajie, and xingqiu together. They placed bamboo slips across wooden tables, dipped brushes in ink, and moved their hands in gentle arcs. The rhythm of their work was almost meditative. Each stroke rose like a deep breath and fell like a slow exhale. Even mistakes felt soft, brushed away with quiet smiles. These methods turned the writing system into a living garden. Huiyi formed sturdy branches. Jiaji wound its playful vines through the structure. Xingqiu reached downward with thoughtful roots. Together they allowed the written language to blossom into something far richer than simple drawings. Imagine an ancient scribe standing before a bamboo scroll filled with newly formed characters. They run their fingertips lightly across the grooves and brushstrokes. Their expression is warm, not proud, simply content. As evening settles, the characters glow faintly under lantern light, like companions whispering meaning into the gentle dark. Beyond the gentle origins of characters formed through huiyi, jiaji, and xingqiu, the writing system continued to grow with steady grace. As people recorded longer stories, wider journeys, and deeper thoughts, the need for new character forms grew naturally. And as always, ancient scholars responded not with urgency but with calm experimentation, like gardeners tending a field, one small leaf at a time. Huiyi remained a beloved method among scholars. Whenever two ideas combined smoothly, the scholars felt a quiet sense of harmony. They often compared huiyi to blending two soft colors on a palette, each hue retaining its beauty while forming something new together. Whenever a huiyi character appeared, it carried with it a sense of balance, as though the world aligned for a brief moment. Still, even elegant methods have their limits. Many words expressed meanings that could not easily be illustrated. Time, intention, emotion, and transformation were concepts without clear shapes. A picture could show a door, but not opportunity. It could show a person, but not hope. Language wanted to speak further than drawings could reach. That was when jiajie, the sound borrowing method, stepped forward again like a cheerful neighbor tapping on the door. The scribes did not hesitate to borrow characters when needed. If two words sounded alike, a single character could serve both. Later generations would sort out the confusion, the scholars thought. For the moment, the priority was communication. The humor in jiajie never faded. If an ancient linguist walked into a modern classroom and saw students reciting pronunciations that drifted far from their origins, they might grin sheepishly and whisper, "Ah, yes, that was our fault." But without jiajie, the writing system would have struggled to express many abstract ideas. Meanwhile, xingqiu continued to flourish quietly. This semantic extension method acted like a soft breeze that carried meaning from one branch of a tree to another. A character could gently expand from one sense to a related one, never breaking its connection with its origin. It was subtle, elegant, and profoundly human. Xingqiu's power came from the way ancient people perceived their world. They saw everything as interconnected. The earth, the sky, the seasons, and human experience flowed into one another like linked streams. It felt natural then for meanings to flow as well. A character for dawn could extend to mean beginning. A character for path could mean method. A character for heart could stretch to mean thought, feeling, or intent. In the calm stillness of ancient workshops, scribes used all three methods seamlessly. They sat at low wooden tables surrounded by brushes, inkstones, and bamboo slips. The rustling of paper, the faint scratching of brushes, and the quiet murmur of discussion filled the room. There was no rush. Each character was shaped slowly, lovingly, as though carved from time itself. Sometimes a scribe would pause, brush raised midair, and tilt their head with soft curiosity. "Does this new meaning fit here?" they might ask. Another scribe would lean over, squinting thoughtfully. "Perhaps shift the stroke a little," they would suggest. These exchanges drifted like gentle conversation, each idea opening the door to another. Evenings in these workshops were serene. Lanterns cast warm light onto tables, illuminating characters that seemed to breathe under their glow. The scribes worked until sleepiness tugged at their eyes. Their movements slowed. Brushes rested. Bamboo slips were stacked with care. Outside, the night air cooled, carrying the distant chirping of insects. In modern times, researchers study these early methods with deep admiration. Under gentle lamplight, they examine ancient fragments and trace the evolution of meaning. Sometimes they laugh quietly at Jiaji's playful shortcuts. Other times they fall silent before the beauty of Huiyi's clear logic or Xingqiu's poetic drift. One researcher once joked, "If Huiyi is like two polite scholars shaking hands, Jiajie is like borrowing sugar from your neighbor, and Xingqiu is like discovering your cousin looks just like you." Somehow, the comparison fits perfectly. As night deepens in the research libraries, the old characters glow softly on the pages. They feel alive as though still growing. Huiyi hums with harmony. Jiajie chuckles with borrowed sound. Xingqiu sighs like a gentle wind, carrying meanings from one thought to the next. Together they form the heart of character creation, a trio of quiet ingenuity. They remind us that writing is not only a system of marks, but a living memory of how people understood the world, slowly, softly, thoughtfully, and always with a sense of gentle wonder. Chapter 7. The Ever-Changing Forms of Chinese Characters. In the gentle flow of history, Chinese characters changed shape as softly as clouds drifting across a quiet afternoon sky. Each script carried the mood of its era, shaped by the hands that wrote it and the tools that carved it. In the beginning, the world knew the sharp and ancient lines of oracle bone script, the earliest style carved on turtle shells and ox bones. These markings were angular, firm, and full of the raw honesty of early human expression. They were not meant to be beautiful, only useful, yet they carried the charm of first attempts, like the earliest footsteps of a child learning to walk. People in the Shang dynasty carved these characters with solemn focus, believing that their questions would be carried through cracks in the bones. The strokes, though stiff, held emotion in their simplicity. One might imagine a scribe hunched over the bone, squinting at its surface, thinking that they must make each line count. The roughness of the script came not from lack of intention, but from the difficulty of the medium. Bones are not soft, and knives are not brushes, but even in their rugged shapes, these characters glowed with the early promise of a writing system, waking from silence. As centuries passed, the script softened into bronze script, flowing more gently across ceremonial vessels. These lines curved like small smiles etched into metal, more rounded and confident than their bone-carved ancestors. The smoother surfaces allowed strokes to stretch, bend, and breathe. Bronze script felt festive, used in rituals where families gathered, honoring traditions and the turning of seasons. If oracle bone script was a whisper, bronze script was a soft song. The characters grew plumper, fuller, shaped by molten metal, and a culture learning to enjoy artistic expression. In those gentle shifts of form, one can feel history breathing softly, as though each character were a quiet traveler carrying stories across time. Writers of every era shaped their strokes with patience, and the writing shaped them in return, forming a bond between hand and meaning that lingered through centuries. In the Qin dynasty, the evolution drifted once more into seal script, which flowed with elegance and long rhythmic lines. Seal script felt like the writing had discovered its own sense of style, ornamental, graceful, almost ceremonial in its posture. The strokes curled like ribbons, stretching into shapes that reminded one of vines climbing ancient stone walls. The Qin government standardized this script across the empire, giving it a formal dignity. People stamped it on seals, carved it into stone, and admired its beauty with a quiet pride. As each transition carried whispers of its era, meaning wrapped itself in new shapes that echoed changing lives and shifting landscapes. Through every curve and angle, the writing reflected the quiet persistence of human expression. Evolution softened edges and strengthened lines. Seal script was lovely but time-consuming. As everyday life required faster writing, the people turned to clerical script during the Han Dynasty. Clerical script emerged with flatter strokes that spread like wings across the page. It abandoned the elaborate curls of seal script and replaced them with sturdy lines that could be written quickly. It was a friendly script, relaxed and practical. Officials used it for daily documents, their brushes sweeping confidently across bamboo strips. The famous silkworm head and wild goose tail stroke reflected both charm and efficiency. Clerical script walked gracefully between beauty and speed. In those gentle shifts of form, one can feel history breathing softly, as though each character were a quiet traveler carrying stories across time. Writers of every era shaped their strokes with patience, and the writing shaped them in return, forming a bond between hand and meaning that lingered through centuries. Eventually, clerical script transformed into standard script, the calm and balanced style still used today. Standard script carried equilibrium in every stroke, each line placed deliberately, each dot set with intention. It became the core of Chinese writing, the form that students learn when they trace characters on practice sheets. The posture of standard script was steady, its presence reassuring, like a trusted guide who has walked the path many times. It stood as the refined result of centuries of evolution, a script that held tradition while welcoming the future. Each transformation carried whispers of its era, wrapping meaning in new shapes that echoed changing lives and shifting landscapes. Through every curve and angle, the writing reflected the quiet persistence of human expression. Evolution softened edges and strengthened lines. As history continued to unfold, Chinese characters kept adapting, each new style offering a new form of softness or speed. After standard script became the foundation, semi-cursive script emerged, gently loosening the stiffness of formal structure. Semi-cursive script moved like handwriting on a warm afternoon, each character linking lightly to the next. It maintained enough clarity to be read easily, yet flowed with more grace than the rigid forms before it. Writers enjoyed how their brushes glided, how strokes connected like gentle footsteps across soft soil. Semi-cursive script was practical, friendly, and expressive. Scholars used it for letters, poems, and personal notes. It captured the rhythm of thought, quick where ideas rushed, slow where reflections deepened. One can imagine a poet sitting beneath a tree, brush in hand, jotting down verses in semi-cursive, the strokes swaying like branches in the breeze. In those gentle shifts of form, one can feel history breathing softly, as though each character were a quiet traveler, carrying stories across time. Writers of every era shaped their strokes with patience, and the writing shaped them in return, forming a bond between hand and meaning that lingered through centuries. From semi-cursive blossomed cursive script, the wild, dreamy dancer of all writing styles. Cursive script moved with a freedom that felt almost musical. Characters stretched, curled, merged, and sometimes tumbled into one another like waves rolling across a shore. Entire components disappeared into swift strokes, leaving behind only the essence. This script revealed emotion more clearly than any other. A joyful calligrapher wrote with buoyant, bouncy lines. A melancholic one let the ink trail like distant rain. Reading cursive script felt like listening to someone hum their thoughts. Each transformation carried whispers of its era, wrapping meaning in new shapes that echoed changing lives and shifting landscapes. Through every curve and angle, the writing reflected the quiet persistence of human expression. Even within standard script, subtle variations flourished across dynasties. Calligraphers left their personalities in each stroke. Some pressed heavily, others lightly. Some favored angular shapes, others rounder ones. Characters tilted slightly depending on the writer's mood. Over time, writing became not only a tool, but a mirror of the soul. Evolution softened edges and strengthened lines. Each of these scripts resembled different modern fonts. Oracle bone script might resemble pixelated geometry, bronze script, a rounded display font, seal script, a ceremonial logo font, clerical script, a practical document font, standard script, a clean system font, semi-cursive, a natural handwriting font, and cursive script, an expressive signature font. Ancient eras like modern design trends held preferences for visual style, shifting with taste, culture, and function. In those gentle shifts of form, one can feel history breathing softly, as though each character were a quiet traveler carrying stories across time. Tools shaped these changes too. As brushes replaced knives, strokes softened. As paper replaced bamboo, lines lengthened and flowed. Moisture, ink thickness, and paper texture created subtle differences, making each writing experience unique. Chinese characters lived through these tools, absorbing their personalities like soft cloth, picking up the scent of a summer breeze. Each transformation carried whispers of its era, wrapping meaning in new shapes that echoed changing lives and shifting landscapes. Through every curve and angle, the writing reflected the quiet persistence of human expression. The script moved gently with each new age. Yet through all transformations, the writing retained its quiet consistency. At its core, each character remained a small vessel carrying meaning across time. Whether carved, cast, brushed, or typed, the spirit of the character endured. Today, students practicing their first strokes unknowingly echo movements made by scribes thousands of years ago. Calligraphers, painting sweeping brush lines, follow the rhythm of ancient masters, and those who type characters on a glowing screen continue a lineage older than many civilizations. The script moved gently with each new age. Chinese script has journeyed from bone to bronze, from seals to scrolls, from paper to digital light, and still it evolves gently, peacefully, as though carried forward by the same quiet wind that once guided the hands of the earliest scribes. The script moved gently with each new age. Chapter 8: The Role of Chinese Characters in Ancient Society. In the slow and gentle rhythm of ancient life, Chinese characters became quiet companions to the people who shaped their days under wide skies and soft winds. Writing was not yet the elegant art form it would later become, but instead a practical lantern, lighting the pathways of daily tasks. The people of old villages and early cities moved with unhurried steps, living in a world where seasons guided everything and the written word offered a kind of steady reassurance. When farmers woke before dawn to check their fields, they sometimes carried bamboo slips tucked into their sleeves, holding notes about rainfall from the year before. These small records felt like nudges from the past, whispering reminders that nature followed patterns worth remembering. Ancient officials used characters to keep track of taxes, not in a harsh or frantic way, but with the same calmness as someone humming while working. They counted grain baskets, tallied bundles of firewood, and noted how many workers helped repair a road. Each record allowed communities to move smoothly, like water slipping around stones in a stream. Even though these tasks sound serious, there is something tender in imagining a clerk bent over bamboo slips, muttering softly as they wrote, hoping not to misplace a single number. Sometimes when mistakes happened, the clerks joked that the characters themselves had shifted positions overnight, refusing to stay in line. Farmers found great comfort in written notes about planting cycles. If a rainy season came early or late, characters captured the change, letting future farmers adjust their timing. Writing was like a shared wisdom that traveled through generations, helping fields stay alive and families stay fed. Under the warm sun, farmers sometimes teased one another about forgetting last year's planting date, telling stories about how characters saved them from repeating mistakes. Their laughter blended with birdsong, drifting across the fields. The community used writing not only for work but also for celebrations. Festivals depended on accurate records, which offerings were needed, which dances would be performed, and when the procession would begin. Characters appeared on banners, on wooden boards, and even on small slips carried by children learning to read. Seeing these characters fluttering in the breeze made people smile. Each mark was a tiny reminder that life with all its routines and joys, was connected through shared understanding. One charming part of ancient life was the tradition of choosing auspicious days for big events. People wanted the sky, stars, and seasons to bless their marriages, journeys, and harvests. Chinese characters played a quiet role here too, holding the wisdom of past generations about which days were lucky and which were best avoided. Villagers would gather around a local elder who had the knowledge to read the records. With slow, careful gestures, the elder traced characters that revealed whether a day was suitable for travel or whether it would bring harmony to a wedding. The villagers watched with wide eyes, trusting the writing as though it were an old friend offering gentle advice. In those moments, the writing became a bridge between people and the natural world. Characters allowed them to understand the rhythms beyond their immediate perception. They were not magical, but they carried the gentle weight of accumulated observations. Every stroke was shaped by someone who once looked at the clouds, felt the wind, and decided that such knowledge must be preserved. Writing also helped communities stay connected. Messengers carried bamboo slips from one village to another, sharing news about upcoming market days, gatherings, or repairs needed on communal wells. These slips traveled slowly, bouncing against the steps of the one carrying them. Still, they always reached their destination. People often laughed, imagining the bamboo slips, complaining about being carried for miles. Yet the messages inside were always welcome, bringing people together. Writing in ancient society was less about strict rules and more about gentle guidance. It gave structure without rigidity, memory without pressure, and organization without urgency. Every character written was an act of care for the future, a small note left for someone who might walk the same path later. As life continued in its unhurried rhythm, Chinese characters took on deeper roles within communities. They became faithful keepers of knowledge, gently recording events that shaped both small villages and vast kingdoms. The slow, steady strokes of brush or stylus held the heartbeat of each generation. Families relied on written records to remember land boundaries, ensuring harmony among neighbors. These characters prevented disputes by providing soft clarity, like a calm voice settling a conversation. People trusted the writing because it carried the weight of shared memory. Characters also supported the movement of goods across distances. Merchants carried wooden tablets marked with lists of items, prices, and agreements. These simple records traveled along dusty roads beside caravans of donkeys and horses. Even traders with the best memory appreciated the reliability of writing. They joked that characters had better recall than any traveling merchant. When deals were made, the written agreements felt like companions overseeing fairness. It was a peaceful partnership between commerce and the written word. In temples and study halls, scholars copied texts by hand, preserving knowledge with patience. Their brushes moved rhythmically as though following the slow breathing of the world around them. These texts contained teachings, observations of nature, medical knowledge, and early attempts at philosophy. Writing allowed wisdom to expand beyond the lifetime of any single person. In an age where the world moved slowly, characters allowed thought itself to move farther and deeper than footsteps alone could carry. Villagers sometimes visited scholars to ask for help with writing letters or recording family histories. These scholars worked with soft smiles, filling bamboo slips with graceful lines. Children watched in awe, marveling at how quickly meaning flowed across the surface. Many giggled when they tried copying the strokes themselves, producing wobbly shapes that leaned like sleepy plants. The scholars encouraged them, reminding them that even the earliest scripts were clumsy at first. In this gentle way, writing passed from hand to hand, becoming part of the shared rhythm of community life. Characters also became tools for healing. Early medical practitioners used writing to track symptoms, treatments, and seasonal illnesses. These records helped them understand patterns, creating a quiet dialogue between body and nature. People trusted these writings because they came from observation and care. The characters became humble guardians of health, carrying memories of what worked and what didn't. Even entertainment benefited from writing. Storytellers used written notes to remember long tales full of heroes, mischief, and wandering spirits. When they performed in village squares, they sometimes held slips behind their backs, glancing at them when memory wavered. The audience pretended not to notice, laughing softly as the storyteller dramatically searched for the next line. Characters in this sense became gentle helpers behind the curtain of performance. In the peaceful unfolding of each day, writing continued to settle naturally into the routines of ancient society, becoming like a quiet companion that walked beside every household. People used characters to mark the passing of seasons, to note moments of joy, and to remember challenges that shaped their communities. A farmer might write a small reminder about when the river rose highest last year, hoping the note would guide the next planting. A traveler might jot down the names of faraway villages where hospitality had warmed the journey. These little records were tucked into pouches or tied with string, carried across fields and mountains with gentle pride. Writing also accompanied children as they learned about the world. Parents carved simple characters onto wooden toys or painted them on stones, letting little hands trace the shapes. Children laughed when their lines wobbled, yet each attempt brought them closer to the steady strokes of their elders. Characters appeared in games, in songs, and in bedtime stories, weaving themselves into the earliest memories of childhood. Elders treasured writing as a way to send blessings into the future. They recorded lessons learned from weather, animals, and the behavior of neighbors, turning everyday life into soft wisdom for those who would come after. Some elders joked that writing made them immortal, allowing their thoughts to linger long after their voices faded from the world. They often sat under shade trees, brushing characters onto scraps of bamboo while cicadas hummed overhead. Writing also shaped bonds within the community. People shared written messages to express gratitude, offer support, or invite neighbors to gather for festivals. These small gestures carried warmth, reminding everyone that they were part of a wider circle of care. Each character felt like a gentle tap on the shoulder, a quiet voice saying, "I remember you." Even when life brought challenges, writing provided comfort and clarity. It offered a steady place to return to, a way to organize thoughts and calm the mind. In this way, Chinese characters became woven into the emotional rhythm of daily living, holding space for laughter, memory, and hope. Chapter 9, Reform and Modernization, The Journey Toward Hanyu Pinyin. In the soft turning of modern history, long after emperors had vanished into the folds of distant dynasties, the written Chinese language found itself standing quietly at the edge of a new era. Society was opening its eyes to trains, telegraphs, textbooks, and schools, full of children who moved faster than the slow, meditative rhythms of ancient brush strokes. In this gentle shift from old to new, Chinese characters, so dignified, so layered, so ancient, began yearning for a companion, a helper who could guide learners through their forest of shapes. And so, like a breeze entering an old library, the concept of phonetic reform drifted into being. At the center of this transformation stood Zhou Yuguang, a man often described as the father of Pinyin, though he always chuckled modestly at the title. His journey toward creating Hanyu Pinyin felt less like a grand conquest and more like a calm walk along a thoughtfully chosen path. He had studied economics, worked abroad, spoken many languages, and lived through eras that changed China's very bones. Yet, with all this weight of experience, he moved with gentle purpose, as if each new idea were a lantern he carried into a dark room, illuminating problems, one soft glow at a time. Before Pinyin existed, learners of Chinese often struggled through the dense landscape of characters, where pronunciation hid shyly behind strokes, radicals, and historical layers. To read a simple word, one needed to memorize shapes that sometimes resembled mountains, rivers, islands, and mythical beasts. Lovely to look at, but not always easy to decode. Many students laughed helplessly, saying that reading Chinese felt like wandering into a forest where every tree carried a different secret. And although such poetry gave the language its charm, it also made learning slow for young readers and nearly impossible for outsiders. Zhou Yuguang saw this challenge not with frustration but with quiet clarity. He believed the characters deserved a companion system, something gentle, something simple, something that would guide learners without replacing the traditional writing. His dream was not to erase centuries of cultural beauty, but to offer a bridge into it. And so he began working on a phonetic system that would reflect the natural sounds of Mandarin, a tool that would let people whisper characters before they learned to draw them. As the work unfolded, the process felt almost like designing a soft, universal melody for the language. Each sound needed a symbol, each tone needed a shape, each syllable needed to smile clearly on the page. Creating the tones was especially delicate. Mandarin's rising and falling sounds moved like small waves, and finding a way to show them visually required a careful hand. But Zhou approached the challenge with the tenderness of someone tuning a musical instrument. Slowly, thoughtfully, he assigned marks that curved gently above vowels, like tiny strokes of wind guiding the reader's voice. The adoption of Pinyin moved gradually into daily life. At first, people were unsure. Some scholars wondered if a phonetic system would disturb the quiet dignity of written Chinese. Others chuckled and imagined children forgetting characters entirely, relying only on the new symbols. But soon they realized that Pinyin was not a competitor. It was a companion. It stood beside the characters like a patient assistant, whispering, "This is how you say it," before stepping respectfully aside. Young students welcomed Pinyin with open arms. For them, it was a small miracle. Suddenly, understanding pronunciation no longer required memorizing entire scrolls of complicated shapes. They could pronounce words without feeling like they needed to draw a dragon across the page just to remember one sound. Many joked that Pinyin saved them from filling notebooks with creatures that looked more mythical than meaningful. Teachers, too, breathed easier, able to focus on meaning and grammar rather than spending endless hours correcting mispronunciations. Outside the classroom, Pinyin flowed gently into street signs, dictionaries, travel guides, maps, and textbooks. It became a guide for visitors wandering through Chinese cities, helping them whisper unfamiliar names without stumbling. Even technology embraced it. Computers, phones, and typing systems began leaning on Pinyin as their bridge between the alphabet and the characters. What once required specialized stroke-counting knowledge now unfolded with a simple string of letters. It was as if the language had gained a soft, new voice. And through all of this, Chinese characters remained unchanged in their beauty. They continued to stand tall like ancient trees whose roots reached deep into the soil of culture. Pinyin did not disturb them. It watered the ground around them, helping new learners approach with confidence. In this way, Part 1 ends with the language standing at the doorway of modernity, ready for the dawn described in. In the warm, unhurried flow of modern society, Pinyin settled into place like a gentle companion who never demanded attention but was always ready to help. Its letters were familiar to the world, yet arranged in a way that felt uniquely Chinese, carrying the soft breath of Mandarin within each curve and line. Teachers began their mornings writing Pinyin on chalkboards, the white dust drifting like tiny snowflakes as young voices repeated the syllables with quiet determination. These lessons felt lighter than the old days of struggling through character shapes, and yet they carried deep importance, laying a foundation that let children climb gracefully into literacy. Over time, Pinyin became deeply woven into the rhythms of education. Children learned it before they ever learned to write characters, treating it almost like the first friendly voice in the room. When they encountered difficult characters, Pinyin offered its small whisper of guidance. When they read stories, Pinyin danced softly above the text, offering confidence. Teachers noticed that even the shyest students began to speak more boldly, no longer fearing the challenge of tones that once confused them. It was as though Pinyin placed a warm hand on their shoulder and said, "It's all right. We will go slowly." Beyond classrooms, Pinyin continued shaping life in subtle, everyday ways. Street signs displayed it quietly beneath characters, like a friendly hint for travelers. Train stations wrote station names in both scripts, helping passengers feel less lost when navigating the vastness of China. Many foreigners who once stared anxiously at characters they could not read now felt a sense of calm, able to speak names even if imperfectly. Pinyin offered an open door, a small welcome mat, at the threshold of the language. When technology blossomed, Pinyin stepped effortlessly into its new role. Early computer users discovered that typing characters directly was too slow, too intricate for a keyboard designed for only 26 letters. But Pinyin, with its soft adaptability, offered the perfect solution. Typing Chinese characters became a matter of gently tapping out familiar sounds. What once required ink, brushes, and practice now slid easily under fingertips. Even smartphones embraced Pinyin, letting users write messages with the breeze of a few keystrokes. The transformation felt less like a disruption and more like watching a lotus unfold in warm water, smooth, natural, inevitable. Yet despite its growing importance, Pinyin remained humble. It never attempted to replace characters or overshadow them. It was content to exist alongside them, offering structure and sound to those beginning their journey. Zhou Yuguang himself often reminded people that Chinese characters were treasures, not relics. He said Pinyin was merely a friendly ladder, helping learners reach the branches of a tall tree without fear of falling. His metaphor carried warmth and people embraced it with smiles. In households across the country, Pinyin appeared on calendars, recipe books, children's labels, and even in quiet notes between family members. Grandparents used it to teach grandchildren pronunciation, laughing softly when the children exaggerated tones for fun. Parents pasted Pinyin labels on cupboards and drawers to help young learners connect sounds with words. These moments formed a gentle chain of memory, tying families across generations. Writers and poets found their own uses for Pinyin as well. Some whispered new ideas into notebooks using Pinyin as a placeholder, letting thoughts flow before translating them into characters. Others used it to capture fleeting lines of poetry before they slipped away, like morning mist. In this way, Pinyin became not only a learning tool, but a creative companion. And still, the characters themselves remained steady and dignified. They watched this new phonetic system without fear, knowing that their place in culture was unwavering. They seemed to understand that Pinyin was not a rival, but a bridge, a small, supportive voice guiding the learners into their ancient forest of meaning. The two systems lived together peacefully like old friends who understood each other's strengths. As the years drifted on, Pinyin revealed its quiet, enduring magic. It had made Chinese more reachable without making it simpler, more welcoming without diminishing its depth. Students who began with Pinyin eventually learned thousands of characters. Travelers who relied on Pinyin felt more connected to the language around them. And children who whispered their first syllables through Pinyin grew into adults who wrote characters with ease. Today, Pinyin continues to guide learners, travelers, dreamers, and storytellers. It stands beside the Chinese language as a soft hand extended, offering clarity without pressure, help without intrusion, and in its calm, gentle presence, the language steps confidently into the future while carrying the timeless beauty of its past. Chapter 10. The Continuing Journey. Writing in the Modern World. In the gentle unfolding of modern life, Chinese characters continue to move beside us with a softness that feels almost like breathing. Long after their beginnings on turtle shells, bones, and bronze vessels, they now glow quietly from phone screens, shimmer across LED signs, and settle into the smooth rhythm of keyboards. It is remarkable, in a peaceful kind of way, how something so ancient can sit so comfortably inside the pocket of a teenager or drift across the curved surface of a digital billboard. Many people joke that the characters have lived a more dramatic life journey than most humans, from oracle bones to OLED displays, but the characters themselves seem to take this in stride, adjusting their strokes with patient calm. In the morning, commuters glance at their phones, and characters appear gently on their screens, offering weather forecasts, simple reminders, and quiet greetings. The strokes that once took careful brushwork now appear with a tap or a swipe, yet the meaning remains steady. Even when written with thumbs instead of brushes, the characters feel familiar, like old friends who simply learned to dress differently for a new age. Some people smile and say that characters have become stylish without losing their ancient charm, as though history itself decided to wear modern clothes. At workplaces, characters float across computer monitors with calm purpose. Emails, messages, reports, and digital notes maintain the same quiet elegance that scrolls once carried. Instead of unrolling silk, people scroll through documents, letting lines of text slide gently beneath their fingertips. The transition from hand to keyboard did not diminish the characters. It simply asked them to learn a new dance. And they learned gracefully, stepping across keys with the subtle rhythm of memory. One charming detail of modern writing is the coexistence of tradition and technology. Some people still practice calligraphy, dipping brushes into ink and letting time slow as they press each stroke with intention. Others type rapidly, letting characters fall into place with effortless ease. Yet whether written slowly or quickly, physically or digitally, the characters retain their ancient heartbeat. The brush captures their breath. The keyboard captures their motion. Both forms are true, and both are gentle. Children, too, meet the characters in new, soft ways. Instead of bamboo slips, they use tablets that sparkle with animations. When a child traces a character with a small, curious finger, the screen glows warmly, guiding them stroke by stroke. Sometimes the tablet cheers with stars and soft chimes, turning each lesson into a small celebration. Learning feels lighter, almost playful, as though the characters have decided to greet modern children with kindness rather than strictness. In city streets, characters shine from shop signs, traffic boards, and illuminated advertisements. They move across screens above train platforms, glowing in warm colors that guide commuters home. It is amusing to imagine how ancient scribes might react if they could see their writing sparkling in neon. Perhaps they would laugh, shake their heads, and mutter something like, "We only carved a few lines. We didn't expect them to travel this far." Despite the rise of technology, Chinese characters remain steady, carrying the same gentle logic they held thousands of years ago. They have not rushed to adapt nor resisted change. Instead, they have settled into the modern world slowly, like a river, adjusting its path without losing its quiet flow. On screens, characters appear simplified and clear. But in traditional calligraphy studios, their older forms still dance with graceful strokes. It feels as though the characters now enjoy having two wardrobes, one formal and flowing, one simple and practical. Technology has given the characters new homes. On social media, they drift through brief conversations, light and airy. In digital art, they blend with colors and movement. In coding environments, they appear in text-based worlds, communicating ideas to software just as they once communicated ideas to emperors. The contrast is both humorous and comforting. Characters that once told fortunes on turtle shells now label folders in cloud storage. One could say they took a very scenic route from ancient rituals to modern apps. Keyboards, once unfamiliar to the language, have become loyal companions. People press combinations of Pinyin letters and characters appear almost magically. It is as though the characters wait behind a curtain, ready to step forward when called. The moment the right letters are typed, the correct character emerges with a gentle bow. This partnership between Pinyin and characters has made modern writing feel smooth, almost musical. The rhythm of typing echoes the rhythm of brush strokes, though in a quicker, lighter way. Screens have also transformed how characters travel. Where messages once took days to carry between villages, they now glide across the world in seconds. A handwritten character photographed by a student can appear instantly on a friend's phone thousands of miles away. It is a strange, gentle magic, ordinary now, but still quietly impressive. Despite all the speed, characters continue to teach patience. Calligraphy classes remind students to slow down. Teachers guide them to breathe with each stroke, letting the brush move as though time itself were stretching softly around the paper. Children raised tapping screens find unexpected peace watching ink spread across rice paper. Tradition and modernity touch hands in these moments, creating a subtle harmony. Chinese characters remain woven into every part of life. Restaurant menus, poetry, textbooks, medicine labels, wedding invitations, subway signs, digital passwords, and late-night messages between friends. Whether glowing from the surface of a tablet or drifting across a handwritten note, the characters move with a softness shaped by history. People like to joke that Chinese characters have traveled from turtle shells to LED screens, a long, winding journey that even the characters themselves might need a nap after completing. And so the journey continues. Chinese writing has survived dynasties, revolutions, inventions, and digital transformations, yet it continues to walk quietly beside people with a slow, steady rhythm. It does not rush forward because it understands that time unfolds in patient cycles. It does not cling tightly to the past because the present holds its own gentle beauty. Characters evolve quietly, adapting without losing their soul. Their story is not finished. It continues to unfold, stroke by stroke, screen by screen, moment by moment, moving softly into the future while carrying the calm wisdom of thousands of years. The night that cradles all stories. In the quiet drift of late evening, when thoughts move gently like lanterns floating down a calm river, it becomes easy to look back on the long, wandering story of human history and feel a kind of peaceful admiration. The world has changed so many times. Dynasties rising and resting, empires expanding and dissolving, inventions reshaping lives softly or suddenly. And yet, across all those shifting landscapes, people have always carried a desire to leave traces behind. Not heavy footprints, not loud declarations, but small, steady marks. Words, symbols, letters, characters. They were the soft threads that held memories in place. When we think about ancient scribes sitting beside oil lamps, brush in hand, we can almost hear the faint scratch of ink meeting paper. Their world was quieter, with nights longer and days slower. Each stroke they wrote required breath, balance, and patience. Some probably yawned, some probably mumbled to themselves, and a few may have wished writing were just a tiny bit easier, perhaps wondering why characters needed so many strokes. If only they knew a future student would type the same ideas in seconds, tapping lightly on a glowing screen while half asleep. And yet the heart of writing never changed. Even as tools evolved, from sharpened bones to bamboo brushes, from printing blocks to keyboards, the gentle purpose behind each symbol remained the same: to hold meaning, to guide memory, to connect minds across distances of time. A letter written hundreds of years ago still whispers its message today, patient and unchanged, even though the writer's world has long drifted into history. When we follow the journey of writing through the centuries, it feels almost like watching a very calm traveler move across a vast map. The traveler never rushes, never panics. They simply continue, step by steady step, carrying stories, laws, songs, jokes, recipes, dreams, warnings, blessings, and questions. Sometimes the traveler passes through golden ages full of art and learning, sometimes through quiet villages where nothing much happens except the passing of seasons, and sometimes through storms of war or uncertainty. But they continue always. There is gentle humor in imagining how the ancient creators of early scripts would react to modern writing. Picture a scribe from the Shang dynasty seeing characters appear on a smartphone, glowing, shrinking, enlarging, spinning if you swipe too enthusiastically. They might step back in alarm or maybe lean in with curiosity. Perhaps they would ask, "Why does your writing live inside a piece of glass?" Or, "Why does the paper glow? Is it enchanted?" And someone today might answer, half laughing, "It's not magic, just technology." Although, honestly, sometimes it feels like magic too. Through all these changes, writing has remained one of humanity's softest, most loyal companions. It sits quietly in the background of daily life, waiting for someone to pick it up. Whether a leader signs an important document, a child writes their name for the first time, or a traveler scribbles notes about a place they want to remember, writing simply offers itself without judgment. It does not push. It does not demand. It says only, "If you wish, I am here." Perhaps that is why written language feels so comforting. It carries no rush, no urgency. It waits. Words written centuries ago wait for us to read them. Words we write today will wait for someone in the future. Writing is patient in ways people sometimes forget to be. As we reach the end of this gentle reflection, it feels right to pause and breathe, letting the long story of written history settle softly like evening dust in a library. We have wandered from oracle bones to glowing screens, from brush strokes to digital fonts, from quiet ancient rooms to bustling modern cities where characters shine from neon boards. The journey has been long, beautifully long, but steady. Writing never hurried. It simply walked alongside humanity, matching our pace, whether slow or swift. And now, as night deepens, perhaps the best ending is a simple one. A reminder that even though history expands endlessly behind us and stretches endlessly ahead, there will always be new pages waiting. New stories, new ideas, new meanings carried gently forward by the symbols we choose to write. The journey does not stop here. It simply flows onward, quiet and sure. So close your eyes softly, knowing that the written world continues its peaceful path, carrying memories of the past and whispers of the future. Good night and sweet dreams. May you continue to follow the gentle unfolding of world history, page by page, story by story, in the calm rhythm of your own time.